Welcome to Relationships in Progress with your host, LaShonda Thomas of Lioness Counseling, located at 5601 Bridge Street in Fort Worth, Texas. So, here on Relationships in Progress, we discuss all sorts of relationships, such as romantic relationships, co working relationships, sibling relationships, romantic relationships, parent child relationships, and amongst other things. So, today I want to talk about our relationship with sexuality. So, I want to talk about sexuality versus identity because there is a huge difference. A lot of people, most people, especially people that are not growing up in these times, do not understand that there is a stark difference between sexuality and identity, and that's why we struggle to understand sexuality as a whole. So today I kind of want to just break down some of those common misunderstandings that we know about sexuality in 2018. So, I love quotes, and I want to start out with a quote: sex is something you do, sexuality is something you are. And that is from Anna Freud, Sigmund Freud's famous daughter, who was also a psychiatrist as well. So, sex is an act, but sexuality is who you are. So, the sexuality being something who you are relates more to the identity than my sexual orientation. Who I choose to have sex with could change. That is a physical act, that is a behavior. And behaviors are subject to change, but your identity, who you are to the core of your inner being, does not ever change whatsoever, regardless of what's going on in your life, regardless of how much you try to hide your true self to others. Sexuality itself, regardless, doesn't really change your identity. So, what is sexuality? What does that term mean? Sexuality is a very, very broad umbrella term. And so, in the terms of how I'm going to be using it today, because it is used differently and there is some wrong ways, but this is the right way to use it. So, sexuality is defined as a person's sexual orientation or preference and their gender identity. So, I'm going to say that again because I know I speak fast. Sexuality is a person's sexual orientation or preference and their gender identity. So, as you can see in the definition that I am using here, it is composed of two separate terms: sexual orientation and gender identity. So, the whole topic that I have of this one is going to be sexuality versus identity. But what I specifically mean by sexuality and identity, I mean sexual orientation and gender identity. Just don't sound that good when you say sexual orientation versus gender identity. Too many words, but that is exactly what I mean. So everyone's sexuality is different because remember, sexuality is that big umbrella term that is used to discuss all sorts of things within sexuality. So everyone's sexuality is different. It is not necessarily as simple as being gay or straight. Some people are attracted only to one sex. Some people are attracted to many people regardless of sex or gender, with a lot of different preferences in between. There is a lot of room when it comes to sexuality than just being gay or straight than what it used to be. So, what does sexual orientation mean? Since I've highlighted that there's a stark difference. Sexual orientation is an inherent or immutable, enduring emotional, romantic, or sexual attraction to other people. An inherent or immutable, enduring emotional, romantic, or sexual attraction to other people. And it is a definition by the Human Rights Campaign themselves. So pretty much they use a lot of nice fancy words in their definition, but sexual orientation pretty much means who I choose to sleep with. That's what sexual orientation means. When I ask you your sexual orientation, that refers to who do you sleep with. So if I say, what is your sexual orientation? And then you tell me transgender, you have no clue of what your sexual orientation is, because transgender is not a sexual orientation. Hear me when I say that, because remember, sexual orientation refers to who you choose to sleep with. Transgender has nothing to do with who they choose to sleep with. So, transgender is more of an identity. So, what is gender identity? Gender identity is one's innermost concept of self as male, female, a blend of both, or neither. how individuals perceive themselves and what they call themselves. One's gender identity can be the same or different from their sex assigned at birth. This is also a definition from the Human Rights Campaign. So, gender identity is not just male and female anymore. That is just not the world that we live in. Some places where you write in your sex or actually check a box, some of those places are now putting transgender as something that you can check up under gender on a lot of applications these days. So we have expanded our understanding of what gender means. Because once upon a time, gender just meant biological characteristics. What were you biologically born? But then, even if so, even with those strict physical terms, there were still some people that were in between, because we all know there are some people who are born with both parts. I'm just going to leave that right there, because this is not the topic. This is not that kind of topic for today when we're talking about that. So I'm going to say this again. Sexual orientation refers to who you sleep with. Gender identity refers to how you perceive yourself and what you choose to call yourself. So let me give you a little bit about history. So this is going to be me going into Teacher Shonda mode. So I'm going to educate you guys right quick. So I need y'all to pull out your spirals, pull out your laptops, and take notes for this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the evolution of sexuality as what we have come to know it. Now I'm going to give you a tidbit, a sample. We're not going into the lecturer hall and I'm going full professor mode. I ain't going to go full professor mode, not today. But of course, if you have any questions regarding any of the material that is presented, or you just want to know more questions about sexuality or identity, especially if you have children that are struggling with some of these issues, please hit me up at any of the social medias that I have on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Just search Lioness Counseling. I will be there, and please pose any questions that you have to me. I will always answer your questions, as I'm a very open person. So, with that being said, the evolution of sexuality. So, homosexuality in itself, because when I'm talking about sexuality, I am specifically talking about alternative sexual lifestyles. So I'm not saying people that identify as straights, what the evolution of sexuality is for straight people, because we learned that in sex ed or any of those courses that you have learned about lifespan development, what have you. That is taught in schools all day, every day, about the sexual organs and what are they used for. This is not that topic, because like I said, sexuality is a big umbrella term that encompasses a lot of different ideologies. So, homosexuality, back to homosexuality. I'm saying homosexuality because it's a predated term, and I'm talking about the evolution of sexuality. But please don't use homosexual in 2018. That word is no longer usable. Don't say homosexual. Please say gay, lesbian, what other term they are. Homosexual is no longer valid. So, homosexuality itself, it predates the arrival of Christ. So, you see your little BC. BC, for those who you did not know, means before Christ. But now, a lot of textbooks have changed to where you'll see BCE, which now means before Common Era, because a lot of people don't want religion used as a basis to measure time. Understandable. So, back to what I was saying, because I done put a whole nother education. I done educated you on what BC meant, because some of y'all did not pay attention in school. So, homosexuality predates the arrival of Christ. How do we know this? Because there are plenty of hieroglyphics. Y'all remember hieroglyphics? They remember the little symbols that the Egyptian people wrote? There were plenty of hieroglyphics found on old caves and fossils and pieces of rock that were broken off that depicts two men having sexual intercourse. So this is not a new term. This is not something that was just mentioned in the Bible and that was the first time it was mentioned. No, it predated the arrival of Christ. Homosexuality is also discussed in ancient Greece. So when you read a lot of ancient Greek material, or if you notice a lot of their paintings and drawings that they have, they have a lot of pictures of young boys. Young boys, I mean, are before puberty. So let's just say 11 and down with older men. Because in ancient Greece, it was a culture for older men to be with younger boys. It was a term called pederasty, is what that meant. And so a lot of these younger boys were, I'm not going to use the term sex slaves because that's not the word that I want to say, and that's not how I associate it in what we use sex slaves for today. But it was pretty much a young boy having sexual acts with an older man and receiving some sort of benefit to it. So let's say it was an earlier form of prostitution to a certain degree, but it was largely acceptable in ancient Greece. It was also accepted in all of the Roman empires. If you go back and read your history books of a lot of your most famous Roman emperors, a lot of them was homosexual, and they had traditional marriage ceremonies with their male counterparts. My bad, I can't even talk today. With their male counterparts. So it was largely acceptable in Roman culture as well that men could date other men, and they had marriage ceremonies, because the people I'm talking about are the emperors. I'm not talking about the peasants and the slaves that no one knows about. I'm talking about the emperors, the people who ran those empires. They were homosexual, and it was out. It wasn't hidden. People came to the ceremony. People were well aware of them having another male involved. Homosexuality did not become stigmatized until it was placed in the Bible that men should not, another man should lay with another man. We all know the scripture in the Bible. This is not that section of the radio show to talk about the Bible, but that is pretty much when it became largely a crime and hugely looked down on by the larger society. Many historical accounts only mention gay men. So even when you hear me talking about this, you hear me talking about gay men, not women. Now, of course, I can go all the way around the world as to why it is not mentioned about lesbian women, but they are gay men all up and through a lot of our historical texts. But to simplify it, I'm going to say women were not important enough during those times to get stories written about them. They were not important enough to even be noticed. So even if what they was doing behind closed doors, no one really cared as long as you were doing the other job duties that you were supposed to do as a wife. So that's why personally I feel like a lot of historical contexts do not mention lesbian women, because women just did not have rights. Because of course we know the women's rights and the women's suffrage movements did not happen until well into the 1900s. So this was not even going on during the Roman emperor's time or ancient Greece. So I'm going to fast forward a couple years to when it gets important again, is that on August 29th, 1867, Karl Heinrich Ulrich, y'all know I'm not German, I'm not going to mess up this man's name, I'm just going to leave it like that. We're going to say Karl with a K. He became the first self-proclaimed homosexual to speak out publicly for homosexual rights when he pleaded at the Congress of the German Jurors in Munich for a resolution urging the repeal of anti-homosexual laws. So, of course, when I say this is after Christ, so after biblical accounts state that we're not, men and men are not supposed to lay down, now we have laws that are banning such activity. So he himself is a homosexual. He was speaking out, and they had their little town hall meetings about things that were being changed and talking about laws, and he wanted to repeal those laws as he was a homosexual man himself. So that was the first legal account when a homosexual man spoke out on homosexual rights. So a couple years later on, because 1869, this is when the term homosexuality appears in print for the first time in a German pamphlet. So when you hear me talking about how homosexuality is a dated term and we no longer use it anymore, think about it. This term been alive since 1869. Our whole concept of sexuality has changed. How we talk about it, how we write about it, how we exude sexuality has totally turned since 1869. So please don't use the word homosexual. Please use the word gay, straight, lesbian, bisexual, trisexual, asexual, all those sexuals. Use those. So in 1869 is when you see the first use of the word homosexuality, and then in 1886 in England, because I'm kind of going all around the world. I done went from ancient Greece, I done talked about Romans, we done got to German law. Now we're going to just wrap it on around with England law. So in 1886 in England, the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 1885, outlawing sexual relations between men, but not between women, is given royal assent by Queen Victoria. So pretty much she put her stamp on it, her signature, stating that this is illegal and we are not allowing this to happen. But like I said, they didn't mention women. And honestly, I think Queen Victoria was a lesbian too, low key, but that's not the topic of this conversation either. So she gave a stamp saying that these sexual relations are outlawed, further pushing that stigma that you're not supposed to be with same-sex people. So in 1892, this is when the term bisexual and heterosexual was first used in English in those current senses in Charles Gibbard Haddock's translation of Krafft Ebing's Psychopathia Sexualis. Pretty much a fancy textbook that they talked about in college that made themselves feel important. So when those words came out. So in 1892, we have the use of bisexual and heterosexual. And in 1886, we have had the term of homosexuality. So we have all these terms being originated in the 1800s. So now can you understand? It's no wonder why we have all these new terms that are coming about, because all these terms we've been using predates the 1900s. We in 2018. So if all these terms predate 1900s, there has been a lot that has changed within the world since those times. So yes, I understand that a lot of these new terms can be confusing and can be misleading, but if we've been using these terms since before 1900, it's time for a change. It's time to welcome the change. And I just want to educate you on how we even got to this point when we talk about sexuality. So a lot of people like to talk about, sexuality wasn't a thing until it was mentioned in the Bible. No, you hear me, LaShonda Thomas of Lioness Counseling, put that on me. If you heard me say homosexuality predates the arrival of Christ. Egyptians was doing it. They was getting it in. So please do your research and you can find out that for yourself. So now I can get off of my professor mode right now. I can go back into therapy mode because I don't really like to teach because y'all know I can't stay focused. But so now I want to talk about sexual orientation, because remember before I talked about the definition of sexuality comprises sexual orientation as well as gender identity. They are two parts that make up sexuality. So by sexual orientation, I mean lesbian, gay, bisexual, asexual, pansexual. So these are the 5 terms. Of course, there are other words that pretty much mean the same thing, but these are the 5 standing sexualities that we recognize right now. So, of course, a lesbian is a woman who is sexually attracted to another woman. Men cannot be lesbians. Gays are men who are sexually attracted to one another. Now, gay can also be used for a woman as well. It's still politically correct to use for a woman, but for the terms of this conversation and moving forward, when I use the word gays, I'm talking about men who like men. Then we have those termed bisexual. Remember, this predates 1900s. Is those who are sexually attracted to the same sex as well as the opposite sex. So asexual and pansexual are 2 new terms that have came about recently in recent years. So asexuals are those who are not sexually attracted to anyone. They do not want to lay in bed with anyone. They don't feel the desire, the need to have sex. That is what an asexual person means. Now, that don't mean they don't like to date people. That is one thing that does get misunderstood. They do still date people. They still have relationships. They just have no interest in the physical act of having sex. Then also, you have those who are pansexual. This one is fairly complicated. It's a complex term, but I'm going to pretty much simplify it for you. So pansexual is those who are attracted to others regardless of their gender or sexual identity. So remember, gender and sexual identity are different, remember? So A pansexual can date someone who is a transgender. So pansexual, once again, is a sexual orientation. Transgender is a gender identity. So this person can look straight and be pansexual, and they can date a man that wears makeup but does not identify as being gay. So pansexual is just like all the other gray areas that are in between. So anything else that you can not have a definition for of what these people would be if they were dating, to just lump that into the pansexual category. Now, parents, if your child has used the term pansexual, let them educate you on what that means, because a lot of kids are not using this word correctly because they don't know the difference between sexual orientation and gender identity. So now that you're hearing me talking about this, please relay this information back to your child if they need to be educated further on the matter of sexuality as a whole. So, pansexual or attracted to others regardless of gender, meaning what they physically look like, or their sexual identity, what I identify as, what I feel like I am. So we talked about sexual orientation, now gender identity. So gender identity is male, female, transgender, non-binary, and intersex. Those are pretty much the 5 major gender identities. So of course, male is someone who was born with male physical parts. Female, someone who is physically born with female parts. Transgenders are people who their identity differs from their assigned sex. So if I was born a female, but I feel like I am a man, and therefore I identify as male and dress as such, then I am transgender. If I was biologically born a male, and I feel like I have more female traits, and I tend to dress like a female and identify as a female, but biologically I still have a penis, then I am transgender. Now this is where transgender gets complicated, because of course transgender means I am not physically what I feel. Once you have a sex change surgery, you're no longer transgender. You are whatever gender you have had your sex change surgery to look like, because at this point you are legally male or female, as you have all parts that match who you are on the inside. So if you have a sex change surgery, you're no longer transgender. You can get your ID changed and it can say male or female. Then you have non-binary as a gender identity. Another word you'll hear commonly used to mean the same thing as androgynous. So a non-binary, or someone who is androgynous, is a person who identifies as neither male or female, or they may be identified as both. So, for example, one of my favorites who I always think about when I think of the term non-binary, think about the model Ruby Rose. You can see Ruby Rose on some of her pictures being super feminine with all the makeup on, and then you can see her being real punk rockish with all of her tattoos being revealed and a whole different look. And she modeled as male or female because she can do both. So pretty much those who dress like male one day, female one day, a lot of times they may have different names that go with each one of these personas per se, in which their days they may be feeling more male, or days they may be feeling more female, or they just have a neutral name that is one of those that can be male or female. So, and then the last but not least, you have someone who is intersex. So intersex is a person that is born with a combination of male and female biological characteristics, such as chromosomes or genitals, that can make doctors unable to assign their sex as distinctly male or female. So back in the day, we thought about people with both parts. This is pretty much a person with both parts. They may have a penis, but then they have a lot of, estrogen or progesterone in their system, which are female hormones, and they don't have any testosterone in their system, even though they may have a penis. So then, of course, you may have stuff that happens like that, or you can have someone who has female eggs, but something that looks like a penis. And normally, doctors don't like to assign a sex because normally, as kids age, their body kind of automatically goes to one gender or not. Their penis may develop more, so now they're male, or it may not develop anymore. They may start developing boobies, so they're female. So a lot of parents that find themselves in these situations, they don't tell their kids they're any gender until their body is overwhelmingly more than one gender, because the other portion of that can be pretty much fixed with hormones or slight surgeries that they may have. So intersex is a person that has both male and female traits. So we have gender identity, we have male, female, transgender, non-binary, and intersex. So that means gender identity and sexual orientation go hand in hand. So I'm going to ask some frequent questions that people normally ask me when I talk about this. So if I am a transgender female, meaning I am born biologically, I am a female, but I identify as male and I date another guy, does that make me a lesbian? No. That makes you a gay male because you identify as a male and you're dating men. So that pretty much makes you a gay transgender. Two separate things. They don't have to be the same. I can be a traditional female, meaning I identify as female, have all of my traits. I don't identify as male, don't want to be male, but I can date someone that is pansexual. So I am a straight female, and I choose to date a pansexual male. Say, this pansexual male is not limited to just women, because remember, pansexual likes a lot of people. But like I said, sexual orientation and gender identity is different. Now I know for some of you guys this may be a little bit hard to comprehend because it can get very complex, especially when pansexual is thrown into the mix. But I just really, really want you to understand and take hold that sexual orientation and gender identity is different. So you can be non-binary. Matter of fact, I have a 13-year-old who's a non-binary, who is non-binary, biologically a female who likes females. So that gets a little bit complex because, of course, mom doesn't know if this is a phase or a fad or will it change. So if you have kids that are questioning their gender identity, then that means as a parent you need to do more research, because you need to be educated so that you can properly educate your child so they won't be running around here telling people words that they don't know the meaning of. And I say that out of experience because I can't tell you how many kids I have had who identify as an alternative sexuality and don't even know what it means. They just heard somebody else say it and they thought what it mean and assumed based on that person and how they dress. Gender expression, meaning how they dress, has nothing to do with none of this. This is when you get confused when you talk about gender expression as far as what as a dress as. Because if you're just looking at dress, you can assume, and when you assume, you don't always come to the correct conclusion. For example, I'm going to give you a common assumption. Some gay women dress like men, but they don't want to be a man. They don't want to have male parts. They still enjoy their femininity, but they just look like a boy. That does not mean they're transgender. Just because a woman dresses like a man does not mean they are transgender. Remember, transgender is someone who I identify as something that's different than me. If I am a woman and I call myself as a woman, I dress like a man, then I am just a regular female that is a lesbian. So my gender identity is female, sexual orientation is lesbian. Understand the difference? So, with that being said, I want to talk about coming out of the closet, since I'm talking about teenagers in this, and how parents can have such a difficult time with parenting kids these days who identify as one of these other gender identities. Because as a parent, you want them to be what they was born with when they came outside of your body, and you want them to keep the name that you gave them. But that is not always the case. So the term, I want to talk about coming out of the closet, because when I was growing up, it was always, well, so and so done came out the closet, and we all understood what that meant. And I always just question the term coming out the closet. Like, what does that mean, coming out of the closet? How they gonna come out of something that they always been? I never got that as a kid, because I'm like, you been gay your whole life. What you mean you coming out? You been gay. I've been knowing you was gay. We all knew you was gay. I never really liked the term per se, because I feel like a hiding and acceptance within that term, and that term can come in with a lot of depression. So the term itself, it originated in the 60s when gay and lesbian people revealed their sexual orientation to the world. So it was kind of more so of the gay liberation movement that happened around that same time, that was still closely modeled after the civil rights movement, which was also coming on at the same time. So this was a time where our world was just totally flipped upside down, and our understanding of the world was changing. I do feel like we are in the exact same time period right now where our whole world has been flipped, and our whole understanding of it is changing as it has done in the 60s. So when people traditionally come out of the closet or tell everyone that they identify as something different, it's normally during puberty. And it normally happens during puberty because this is when I'm starting to have sexual thoughts of some sort. Because remember, sexual orientation is who you choose to sleep with, who are you physically attracted to. And in puberty, a lot of them haven't slept with each other yet, and they're just now becoming to the point of being sexually attracted to someone. So a lot of times when people are younger and they're questioning, a lot of times they stick out like a sore thumb, and parents really know they just don't want to accept it. So with this traditionally happening during puberty, this is also a time when your body is growing at an accelerated rate. Your brain is developing at an accelerated rate. It's so much going on that it is very hard to be able to fully accept myself and to move on with life. So this time period could be a very, very frightening time where they struggle with accepting themselves. Coming out of the closet to me is like a liberating term. I came from the darkness into the light. That's the visual imagery I think about when I think about coming out of the closet. When you open the door and that crack of light opens and opens and opens and gets larger and larger, that's what I think about when coming out of the closet. But for a lot of people, that wasn't liberating. It wasn't them stepping out of darkness into the light. It was them stepping out of darkness into more darkness for a lot of people, because it's hard to accept yourself when the people who you love the most can't accept who you are. And this right here has bothered me for even when I was a child. A lot of my closest friends are gay, family gay. That was always around me. It wasn't a time when I wasn't around a gay person. So to me, that really bothers me when people can't accept them once they come out and say that, no, I'm gay or I'm straight or things like that. I'm like, that's not fair, because who you having sex with ain't got nothing to do with me, because obviously it's not going to be me. I don't care who you choose to lay with. That person did not change. So when people automatically say, well, leave my house or you not welcome here, I'm like, that person who you claim to love is still the same person. It's just who they sleep with is different. And it ain't got nothing to do with me. I'm not watching you. I'm not privy to that. I don't want to be privy to that. Why should it matter? But let me step up off my soapbox, because that is the issue that really bothers me. This term of coming out of the closet, it was once very, very relevant, especially when I was a child. It was always said, we waiting on so-and-so to come out of the closet. They know they trapped in the closet. Then when R. Kelly trapped up in the closet saga came out, that even only exacerbated the use of the term. So coming out is not just an event anymore like it once was. It was a big whole ordeal. Like, people will have to psych themselves up to get the courage to be able to say this and to prepare for how people will react. Whereas a lot of times kids don't feel the need to come out. I can't tell you how many times they believe that, well, everybody know. Just look at me. Look at how I act. Look at what I do. Like, how can you not know? And I tell them all the time, it's not about them not knowing. It's about you accepting yourself and having the courage to tell people straight to their face that, look, this is who I am, and I'm comfortable with who I am. And if you don't love who I am, then you move around. Kids these days have it a whole lot easier when it comes to coming out than people who were, gay or lesbian in the 60s and the 70s and had to get ridiculed for that. So, but of course, without struggle, there is no progress. So that struggle had to happen so that we can become a point where we are right now, when we're fairly acceptable of gays and people who are living an alternative lifestyle, so where they can have all these rights and privileges that the gays and lesbians before them did not have. Because now the whole climate of sexuality has changed, period. Like, even since I was a child, I know I'm young and still look good, so we went that long ago. Even since I was a child, what it was like to be gay or lesbian. Because when I was a child, there was no pansexual, there was no asexual, there was no transgender, there was no androgynous. When I was growing up, it was gay or straight. It wasn't even no bisexual, because a lot of people don't believe in being bisexual. A lot of people feel like it's either or. Whichever one you like the most, or whichever one you ultimately see yourself settling down with, that's who you're supposed to be with. Whereas now, like I said, it's cool to be gay. Like, that's a thing now. A lot of people like to be different. Kids like to be different, especially when they are troubled. They want attention to a certain degree. So some people end up trying an alternative lifestyle just because they want some attention, because the culture is more accepting of it. Those are the cool kids because they're different. I want to be different, and I want people to look at me, and I want to turn heads and get attention. So people are doing it, even when they're not gay, nowhere near gay. And then also with the changing sexual climate that we have, we no longer have a need for the gayborhood. When I was growing up, it was the gayborhood. I'm from Dallas, so Oakland area, that was the gayborhood. They have their own park over there, their own bars, restaurants. They had a library over there. Their whole world was over there, and we called that, a gayborhood, because it was acceptable to be gay over there, because it was just plenty of them, and that was where they congregated at. That's where they hung out. Whereas now we are accepting of people who live alternative lifestyles as a whole, so now they're everywhere. It doesn't have to be, you got to go to this side of the town, you got to go to this bar over here, that's the gay bar, and this is the gay this, the gay that. Now it's no gay this, gay that. You just go and everybody's there. There is not that. So that has changed. And then, of course, the whole transgender bathrooms, that was a law and got passed. But then, of course, we got a new president who's not down for the cause. So then that, you don't hear about the issue with the transgender bathrooms anymore, because he's pretty much taking them away. But having that and understanding that is an issue for people who identify as a sexuality is different than theirs. That is the one moment that they cannot make up or look differently at, because of what they look like when they walk through the door. Now, with the changing sexual climate, there are more options that you can check under gender now. Because like I said, there are some official government paperwork that has male, female, transgender on there now. So transgender is being known as something that is 100% legal, a legally defining term as transgender. And then also the legal definition of male and female has changed now. Because once upon a time it was pretty much who have male and female parts that designates if you're male or female. Whereas now it's all about, what do you identify as? What do you feel in your heart of hearts? Which sex do you relate the most to? Which thought process do you closely emulate? Is it male or female? So the definition is now more about identity than physical characteristics now. Now, one thing that has happened is that gender reassignment surgery is a medical necessity. So for those of you who did not know this and contemplating on changing your sex, your insurance will pay for that. But of course, there are requirements for anything. For it to be a medical necessity, you have to have a letter of recommendation from a professional normally a therapist, to make sure that you are mentally okay to undergo a surgery of such sorts. Normally, there is some hormone treatment that has to happen before your surgery. Normally, hormone treatment is more present when a male is transitioning to female, because female transitioning to male don't necessarily have to take hormones until after their surgery, whereas men need to build up more of those in their system before they go through the surgery, primarily for developing of boobs and voice, stuff like that, to be changed. But it can be deemed as a medical necessity if, like I said, you got a letter recommendation from a professional. If you are taking hormone treatments, if you're transitioning from male to female, if you meet criteria for gender dysphoria, pretty much a clinical term for transgender. Pretty much if you 100% on paper meets all of the symptoms as saying that I identify or believe that I am something other than what I was born, then you will of course, fit that requirement as a medical necessity in which you can have your surgery for that. And then, of course, that you're competent and that you're over the age of 18. You can have a gender reassignment surgery before the age of 18, but if you choose to do so, it is out of pocket. And it is not recommended for that. Why is it not recommended? Because your body is not done growing. So once they get the cutting on your body and then you end up growing more, now you're going to have more surgeries. And you're going to keep having more surgeries as you develop, as your body has developed. Because, there are plenty of stories that we read where it's this 8-year-old boy who feels like he's a girl and his parents allow him to dress as a girl, and he wants to have the surgery. And a lot of times when those little boys, when you ask them why, they say, because I want to have babies. And then that's when you have to educate as a parent. Just because you change from biological male to a biological female does not mean you get to produce eggs. You will not be able to have a child. That is not something that you can do. You won't be able to physically conceive a child regardless of the surgery. So educating your children on that. And of course, if you have an 8-year-old kid that is transgender, that's fine. I do believe that is something that can happen at that age, but you need to make sure that they are sure 100% before they decide to have surgeries, because there have been people who have surgery and then decide that I don't want to be this sex that I thought I wanted to be. And of course, kids, their mind changes their mind with the weather. So you cannot be deemed as a medical necessity, meaning insurance will not pay for it if you are below the age of 18. Also, with the changing sexual climate that we have, now I see this commercial. I know a lot of y'all seen this commercial come on all TV for this pill called PrEP. And this pill is pretty much a pill that is designed for the prevention of AIDS. So pretty much this is a pill for gay men to have sex with gay men to a certain degree. That's not who it all, because of course anyone can take this pill. Anyone who are in relationships with someone who may be suspected or have AIDS need to take this pill. And then you see the commercial, they looking all happy, go lucky, and all those type of stuff. Whereas it was not too long ago that AIDS was an epidemic and everybody was afraid of gay people. Everybody was afraid of gay men because they didn't know how AIDS was transmitted. They didn't know they was going to get it. And so it was horrible. It was a horrible epidemic for those of you who are old enough to know what happened during that time period and how ugly of a time that it was, because we just didn't have the knowledge to know that this is what it was. A lot of people just immediately labeled it as a gay people disease, so I don't hang with gay people, and I don't want to get that. Whereas now we know that HIV/AIDS is a sexually transmitted disease, or it can be transplanted from blood to blood as well. So the whole fact that we are in a society where I can look up at my TV and see a pill advertised for same-sex relationships to make it okay to reduce the infection of HIV. That's how we living in totally different times than what we were at the time when the epidemic ran rampant. And so with the changing sexual climate that we undergo, we have to change our laws and our legalities regarding this, because It's here. Ain't nothing we can do about it. All we can do is modify our laws so that everyone can be happy and that people don't get to be depressed with any of that, not being able to be who they are and love who they want to love. So, with that being said, now I need to talk about gay marriage because as of June 26, 2015, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down all state bans on same sex marriage, legalized it in all 50 states as well as our territories, and required states to honor out of state same sex licenses. So, it's legal 100% that same sex marriages can occur, especially in the state of Texas. There are loopholes with any law that gets passed, and a loophole is that the clergy member can refuse to marry you. And yes, they can refuse to marry you because that goes along with your First Amendment rights as freedom of speech and freedom of religion. So if I'm a clergy member and my religion does not subscribe to this and I choose not to do that, they are in 100% of their rights. And then you just need to find someone else that would want to marry you. But it is legal in the state of Texas as of June 26, 2015. Now, with that being legal in all 50 states, our whole marriage definition had to change to accommodate this. So, now, of course, marriage was always defined as a union between a man and a woman. That is not the legal definition anymore. According to Merriam-Webster, the definition of a marriage is the state of being united as spouses in a consensual and contractual relationship recognized by law. In this definition that you just heard me say, there is no mention of gender. It has nothing to do. It says the state of being united as spouses in a consensual, meaning we both agreed, we both wanted to be married to each other, and contractual, meaning we signed our marriage license from the state of Texas and we are recognized by law as being married. So if something happens to my partner, I have all rights to all of their items. Now, of course, there are always going to be loopholes with that, and kids, that is a loophole, a major loophole that can become an issue, because if the other parent has not legally adopted that child, then technically they don't have rights to those children. So that is the loophole that can come when it comes to gay marriage. So now we're talking about gay marriage. I want to talk about how kids are affected by gay marriage, because a lot of people say, especially in the church, I don't want my kids around that. Nope, my kid can't be with you. I don't want them picking up your bad habits. And I'm like, what? So you think they just gonna look at them and see they gay and they just gonna want to be gay one day? They never had desire, never thought about it. Now so they gonna be gay because their friend's gay. It doesn't work that way. No. And the reason why that particular bothers me the most, because this can be the most humble person I know. It can be the most intellectual person I know. The most loving, caring, sweet person that have all the traits that I would want my child to have. But yet you have one thing I don't like, your sexuality. So therefore, you can't be around my kids with that foolishness. And as a parent, you do have the right to choose what is around your kids and what is not around your kids. But at the same time, you want to teach your kids acceptance, because you don't want other people to not accept them for whatever difference they may have, regardless if they agree with it or not. So I want to talk about kids that come from gay marriages, because one thing that interests me is when people always say, these kids gonna be gay because they got two moms or they got two dads. They're gonna be gay because that's all they see and that's all they know. They're gonna be gay. Like, no, they have no higher likelihood of being gay if they have gay parents. So I'm going to flip this on the other side and be devil's advocate right now. So if that was true, that would mean the opposite would reign true too. So how can straight people have gay kids then? If these gay kids been around all this straight love, why did they come out to be gay? Right, it don't work out that way. So anytime you hear someone say, well, I don't want my kids around them because I don't want them around that gay stuff, please think about gay kids around straight people. It is more, how kids fare out is more to do with family functioning than sexuality, because I've seen gay couples have the most healthy family functioning I've ever seen than I've seen with straight people. It has nothing to do with your sexuality, your parental capabilities. Nothing to do with sexuality at all. Make sure that y'all on the same page. It's going to be all right. There is no increased chance of becoming gay if someone's parents are gay. Falsehood. Falsehood. Once upon a time, I know it was very shameful of people to have two moms or two dads, and they got teased and stuff like that because it wasn't normal. It wasn't our normal nuclear family as the term originated, that 2.5 kids with a white picket fence, a house, and a dog. Our whole conceptualization of that is changing now. So there is not shame attached to that anymore. Kids can have gay parents and be okay with that and not being issued because we are in a more accepting culture. Now, with me talking about with gays and lesbians and all of the sexuality, it would not be right if I did not mention religion. Now, I'm going to say mention religion because I don't want to spend too much time on this because this can go 50 million different ways. So I'm just going to keep it simple, and I'm going to say if we are Christians, I'm talking about Christianity because that's what I subscribe to and that's what I know. I'm not speaking on other religions. So please accept my ignorance when it comes to other religions' view on sexuality. So in the Christianity, for me, the value that I believe is the most central value of the Bible, if I had to rank them in order of importance, is to love your neighbor as you love thyself. If my neighbor is gay, then I should love my gay neighbor just as I love me. So I'm not going to shame myself, so I should not shame my gay neighbor. Because from my view of religion, only God can judge. I'm not here to judge your lifestyle and what is right or wrong, or if I believe that you're going to heaven or hell, because it don't make me no never mind. That's you. It ain't my life. That's your life. So don't allow other people to dictate what your life is. You have to live it. And then to me, my understanding is it is not of God to be hateful towards others. That is not of God. God does not have the ability to hate. So if that is not of God, it is of what? The devil. That is all devilish behavior to be hateful towards others based on their sexuality. Now, just because I don't condone your behavior, it doesn't mean I don't have to be cool with you. I can be cool with you, we can kick it, but you know how I feel about that type of stuff. Just like any other stuff in life. Like I may be, like me personally, I can't deal with cheaters. I don't like cheaters to be my friends at all. I don't like that kind of stuff. Don't be around me. But I'm going to still be cool with you and I'm going to still accept you and be nice. I just won't mess with you to a certain degree because I don't condone your behaviors and I don't want those behaviors around me. Same thing about any other things that people are doing. I love you to death, but I don't like your behavior. You ain't got to go back and try to pray over them every time you go see them that God changed their heart and that, because regardless of their relationship with God, has nothing to do with your relationship with God. Because when you go up to heaven, you're going to have to give a personal account of what you did and how you treated other people, regardless of their sexual orientation. God is not going to go up there and say, how did you treat the gay people? How did you treat the lesbian people? How did you treat the rich people? How did you treat the... It's not, y'all know it's not going to work that way. So with that being said, I'm going to move on. Love thy neighbor as you love thyself. And I cannot leave this conversation of sexuality without talking about acceptance, because I feel like acceptance is so key and so crucial to understanding who you are in a sexual aspect. Please understand the difference between other people's expectations and your own expectations. You cannot allow other people's expectations to dictate what your life is and what you should and should not do, because you will not be happy laying up with somebody who you didn't want just to appease someone else. You got to look at yourself in the mirror every day, not them. Love the skin that you're in. We don't get but one skin. We don't get a redo. We don't get a reset button. We don't get to push factory reset and get born all over again. It doesn't happen that way. If you gay, you just gay. It ain't gonna change. If you're a lesbian, you like girls, you just gonna like girls. You can suppress it and do whatever you want to, but it won't change the matter at all. Acceptance is very crucial to the coming out phase. So, parents, if you have children who are thinking that they are something of an alternative sexual lifestyle, please be open to the conversation. Do not shut them down, because you are their parents and you're supposed to what? Have unconditional love for your child. Regardless of what they do, they're still your child. Now, if you don't want them to be gay, you don't like their lifestyle, or you have your own religious beliefs, then you say that, but you say that out of love and not out of anger. You say, you're not supposed to do this. You know the Bible. I take you to church. You know, but I love you regardless. Now, as your parent, I want to learn more about it, because learning more about this sexuality is learning more about my child. So I'm all down for learning everything, but that don't mean I want to be witnessing certain things. And that just comes with setting boundaries. That's 100% reasonable and 100% healthy to say something of that. But accept these people. That's all a lot of these people are asking for. Acceptance as a person that they identify with, not as what you see them as. Because you want people to accept what you are, regardless. Please accept those people. Don't talk down to them. Don't be hateful, because that is not of God. It is not of God. So, that kind of wraps up our conversation about sexuality. So now we're going to wrap it up as we always do with nostalgic moments with LaShonda. And so nostalgic moments is just a quick section of how I want to end a radio show on some positivity notes. We're talking about nostalgia. And nostalgia is just pretty much our relationship with dated things or dated ideas, dated concepts. And so when I'm thinking about nostalgia moments, I am going to always start off where we go way back, like blank, fill in the blank. So today, I'm going to say that we go way back, like when being gay meant being happy. I remember that as a class when you was a kid, you get in trouble like, man, why you over there doing that being gay? I am being happy. I am being happy because I'm gay. And then when you finally learn what the other term of gay is and you don't want to use that word anymore, and then you kind of tease each other and play on that word of being gay and being happy, or meeting people whose first name is gay and stuff like that. So just want to think about that nostalgia moment. I want you guys to go way back and remember when we used to say when gay meant happy. People no longer use that word to mean happy at all. Well, in America, because of course British people tell us differently. So also want to end on a quote. Happiness can exist only in acceptance. You can never be happy in life until you accept who you are. So if you one of those who identifies an alternative sexuality, you will never be happy until you accept yourself. Fully 100% yourself. And those that you consider to be your day ones, your ace boon coon, they need to support you as well. So that concludes this episode of Relationships in Progress. We talked about sexuality versus identity. I talked about the different types of sexual orientations, because remember, sexual orientation is who you choose to have sex with, and gender identity is who you feel that you are on the inside. So we talked about the evolution of sexuality. I kind of gave some knowledge based on some historical facts. Talked about gay marriage being legal in all 50 states and surrounding territories in 2015 in this episode of Relationships in Progress. Once again, if you have any questions about any of the materials that I have presented, please email me at lionesscounseling@gmail.com. And if you want to receive any therapeutic services for you or your child that may be struggling with their sexual identity, you can always go to my website at www.lionesscounseling.com to sign up for any services. The first session is always a free consultation so that we both can see if this will be a good fit moving forward, because I don't want you to spend all this money on someone who you do not like whatsoever. So I'm out, you guys. Don't forget the motto: be you, be true, and enjoy the view.